Hello and welcome to Phase 1 Module 2, where we'll be discussing STEEP categories, and we will also be discussing bias and assumptions, how to identify bias and assumptions, both in reports about the future, industry forecasts, and also learning to identify our own bias and the assumptions that we hold about the future. Now, in order to effectively plan for the future, we must have a framework that takes multiple facets of society into consideration. By doing this, we are enabled to construct plausible future narratives or scenarios in which we envision ourselves and our organizations. Now, the most traditional way of doing this is by using the STEEP categories. And the STEEP categories stand for social, technological, economic, environmental, and political. Now, this framework gives us a holistic perspective of the impacts and implications that trends, issues, and events may have on several different facets of society. If we only look at how a certain technology, either one that is here today or one that is emerging, and we look at how that will impact the technology sector alone, then our perspective is far too narrow. Now, in order to understand the real impact this technology may have on the future as a whole, we have to explore how this technology will affect other facets of society. The most recent example of this is the role that social media, specifically Facebook and Twitter, played in the Arab Spring, which effectively overthrew a 30-plus year dictatorship in Egypt and several other areas throughout the region. So with that in mind, how do we categorize social media, or Facebook, or Twitter, or any of these other programs? We may first look at them as technological, because that's what they are in nature. We then may say these are social, because that's what they are intended for. But in order for us to truly uncover the long-term implications that a trend, issue, or event may have, we have to look beyond the original intent for which it was created and the audience for whom it was created. By doing so, we can gain insight into plausible alternative futures by which we can make better and more informed strategic decisions. So let's briefly discuss each category and some of the specific areas that define these categories. The first is the social category. Now, when we think about our society, the very definition encompasses most of the other categories. However, for the sake of categorizing and identifying specific trends, issues, and events that fall under this category, we'll look at those areas which particularly deal with social interaction, the way that we relate to each other's people, and the opinions and inclinations that the public shares. Some specific examples when looking at the impact that a trend, issue, or event has on society are impact on the family, the impact on arts, leisure, and entertainment, the impact on vices and crimes, and the impact on the community. Because most people consider the future or foresight as centering around new technologies, the technology category may seem a bit redundant. However, the reality is that although technology has become increasingly more integrated into every facet of our lives, the advancement of or growth in the technology sector is still very much vulnerable to other trends, issues, and events. Now, one of the greatest vulnerabilities to technology's growth and expansion is this dependence on electricity and a centralized system of distribution. So let's use our imaginations for a minute and imagine that we were attacked with an EMP device, an electromagnetic pulse device, which would essentially knock out the power, but also cripple the system in and of itself. Now, if the power grid's electricity were suddenly cut off or the system was crippled, the advancement in technology would also be cut off. And although technology has made our lives increasingly more connected, complex, and in many cases more complicated, it has also made both we as the users of technology and the arena for technological advancement extremely vulnerable. Some specific examples when looking at the impact that a trend, issue, or event has on technology in the technology sector would be to look at the impact on communication, or the impact on media and information, and impact on transportation. You will notice with each of these categories that several of the impacts may be interchangeable. For many of you, the idea of economic impact is more familiar and a constant in the dialogue of our culture today. However, it's important to remember that the economic impact goes far beyond the effect that a trend, issue, or event has on the economy. Now, when discussing the economic impact of a certain trend, issue, or event, we must think about specific areas where market confidence, financial stability, and access to capital are paramount to long-term growth and viability. Some specific examples for looking at the economic impact of a trend, issue, or event are to look at the impact on discretionary income and the impact on the job market. Also looking at the impact on education and impact on currency. Now, the environmental category could be considered the most important category of all, since none of the other categories would exist without the natural environment. Extreme weather events are becoming more common year to year, which have a direct impact on the economy, our society, and the type of technology employed to respond. Some specific examples for looking at the impact a trend, issue, or event may have on the natural environment would be look at the impact on resource quality. Also, to look at the impact on resource quantity. We'd also want to look at the impact on agriculture and the impact on wildlife and biodiversity. Now, when we consider the political realm, the political category, the impact a trend, issue, or event has on the decisions made as a result have far-reaching implications into every aspect of our lives and our future. Some specific examples for looking at the political impact a trend, issue, or event may have are to look at the impact on rules and regulations, or the impact on taxation and revenue. We also would want to look at the impact on governance, and then the impact that has on public engagement. Another way in which we make decisions about the future is through the use of industry experts and industry forecasts about the future. Now, when we look at industry forecasts, it's important that we are aware of the biases and the assumptions that the expert is portraying in their vision of the future. This is important to recognize because if we do not take this into consideration, we could drive our organization into a negative future state. One of the places where we see biases and assumptions being thrown at us on a regular basis is in cable news media. And the unfortunate result is that we now have options that fit our own image of the future and align us with the bias and assumptions that we hold about the future or the way that the world works. Now, this, of course, leads to increased polarization, infighting, and dangerously narrow worldviews. In order for you as a leader of an organization to make sound and informed decisions about the future, it's critical that you view information with a critical eye, looking to uncover certain biases and assumptions that may misinform you and your industry on strategic directions for creating long-term success and future growth.